Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of The Sense of Things with Jeff and Ron. We've got another week ahead of us here where we are covering all kinds of crazy stuff going on. Today, of course, we'll have this day in history. Ron's got some great stuff on consumer sentiment, which is actually at its absolute lowest point in over 70 years. I'm going to cover some economic data once again that may refute that, what they say and what they do. We also had the leading economic indicators come out, which is always one of the things I look at to see where we're going. So stay tuned. We'll be right back on in just 1 second. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. Ron, how are you, my friend?
Good morning. Doing well. We survived the SpaceX IPO and it's down again today. So
Yeah.
we'll see where we are here after a year. And we got something signed with Iran, but most people are not happy about it. I read the 14 points. You want to talk about vague and ambiguity.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
It is, yeah, it's not a signed agreement. It's just an MOU. So it's basically an agreement to talk about stuff. So,
Just as good as taking a lady out on her first date and telling you I love her.
yeah. Yeah.
It's
Well,
just
true. Yeah, it's true. It's the nature of this whole thing, and it's all going to come down to what Iran, not what they agree to, but what they actually do. And I think that's going to be the whole thing. What it does seem like is there's some conditions in there that say, okay, you've got to do this before you get any money, or we stop blowing the crap out of you. So
right.
hopefully they'll be able to negotiate a good deal out of this over the next
Well,
60
if history
days.
is any barometer
I have
of
no
them
hope.
keeping their
Yeah.
word, no,
Yeah,
not going to
I have
happen.
no hope.
And it's not going to
And
happen
they,
within 60 days either. So
yeah,
we got to move on to good
and they
stuff.
definitely left themselves a dead man switch where, oh, if the Israelis and the Hamas or Hezbollah, if they are fighting, then we can just get rid of this whole thing. Okay, they're going to keep fighting because Hezbollah is not going to stop lobbing rockets into Israel, and Israel has a right to defend itself. So
Yeah,
tough luck. That should have
yeah.
absolutely nothing to do with Iran.
It does not. It does
Yeah.
not. And we'll be talking about this same conversation 2 months from now also. So.
Probably for the next 60 days.
All right, here we go. Actually, I got to tell you, when I first started putting the slide together, there wasn't a lot of interesting things, and then things picked up pretty good.
Okay.
1775, U.S. Army is founded.
Hooah.
1775, Congress votes to have George Washington lead the
The Continental
Continental Army.
Now that we had an army, we needed somebody to lead it.
Of course. 1776, I did not know this. Delaware declares independence. They seceded from our 13 colonies. 1892, siblings murder becomes first crime solved with fingerprint evidence in Argentina. I actually did read part of this article. It's actually very interesting if you think about any level of technology they had back then.
Yeah.
1903, Ford Motor Company Incorporated. 1917, in the beginning of World War I, the Great War, the U.S. Congress passes the Espionage Act.
Yeah.
1942, because I'm a Beatlemaniac, I had to put it in there. Paul McCartney is born, turning 84. So, my God, it's been a long time since he sang When I'll Be 64.
That's true. Yes.
1947, Bugsy Siegel, organized crime
yeah.
leader, is killed. And by the way, I actually am indirectly twice removed related to him.
Okay.
My aunt was married to his nephew, so I don't know how that necessarily works
I don't know what that,
broken branch
how that rolled down
tree.
to you, but there is a connection.
There is a little bit. She said she met him once.
Okay.
Julius and Ethel Rosenberg executed for espionage. We've talked about this before. It was proven many years later when it was declassified. Julius definitely, with a couple of other people, were passing secrets. The wife had no clue, and essentially she was executed. I saw a couple of documentaries on this. Just the whole thing is super sad.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, she was just death by association.
100%. And the sons were taken away from their parents. They were adopted, given new names, and they were both interviewed. It was just a super sad thing. I couldn't imagine. Yeah. 1972, Watergate, burglars arrested, and hence every scandal we put gate after it.
Yeah.
1967,
nice.
Monterey Pop Festival reaches its climax in the Summer of Love. And then the next year was the basically year of turmoil, 68, the
Yes.
year I was born. So what are you going to do? 1974, going along with the
The
Watergate, All the
Watergate thing. Yeah.
President's Men published, one of the greatest movies of all time.
Yep.
Best written, best acted. It was just incredible. And I just thought it was interesting, right? It from the time the burglars were arrested to the time that Nixon resigned in August of 74, this was public 2 years. 2 years to bring down a presidency. And if it wasn't for Mark Felt, the second in charge of the FBI, we would never have known about this.
And because he was, I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, if he had been made the FBI director,
Director.
we'd have probably known nothing about this. So
Exactly. 100%. 100%. 75, being a movie guy,
nice.
Jaws. And I got to tell you, it was years since I saw this. I saw it again about 4 years ago. I loved it. I've probably seen it probably another 5 or 6 times since.
Mm.
It doesn't, but when you hadn't seen it in so long,
Yeah.
just what a great movie. And then if you ever watch the making of this movie, every day should never have been made because the shark didn't work. I mean,
No,
they had so many problems.
Bruce had issues, so that's a large reason why they didn't really show him that much. That's the funny part. The thing that made the movie the best was the fact that the stupid shark didn't work, and they ended up not really putting him on film a lot. So it was a lot of stuff without him on the screen, which made the movie in
Created
the
mystery.
end. Yeah.
76, NBA merges with the ABA. And I tried to have I wanted to have time to try and find it, but there's actually a story. I can't remember which team it was, but they made a deal with the NBA when they merged because they were an ABA team that when they merged, they made a deal that they would get a percentage of the media rights in perpetuity.
Wow.
So this family collects an unbelievable check every year, and maybe next time I'll research it. I'll get it because
It's
it was one
probably it's
and stupidest deals in history.
Yeah, it's probably the Philadelphia 76ers because
It
you
wasn't.
had it
Yeah.
wasn't really
No.
surprising. Yeah, because they were the most powerful team with Dr. J and the whole
Well, remember,
concept.
hold on a second. Dr. J was on the Nets. He became
Oh, that's right.
available. The
Okay.
Sixers got him from the Nets. The Nets
Okay.
were in the ABA.
Got it. Got
1994, I remember watching this live. O.J. Simpson leaves
it.
police, which you got to think about. If this was any other person, they would have ran this thing off the road
Yes.
a lot earlier than letting him go to the house. That was just an
It was the
insane thing.
strangest thing I've ever seen.
And in 2012, I don't remember this. Nick Wallenda, the flying, walks
Yep.
across Niagara Falls on a tightrope. I don't remember that.
Yep. And he wasn't the first guy to do it either. There was a French guy back in the early 1900s that had done it. So
Ah,
it wasn't like he was the first guy to ever do it.
interesting. And lastly, recent history, the submersible Titan implodes on its way to tour the Titanic rad wreckage. I
Yep.
could not imagine my last moments on that because you wouldn't remember them. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Everything disintegrated. They went down. They were able to go down and see the wreckage. I don't think they found any body parts or maybe
no,
some clothing.
not because they were
Nothing.
crushed. Yeah, they were crushed by it. There were still parts of it left, big chunks of it, but there's a great documentary on this that Josh Gates did on Discovery Channel about it because they had asked him to go down on this thing and they did a little test dive and he was like, I am not getting on that thing. That's a death trap. And he was right.
Yeah. And actually, James Cameron came out too because he's gone down so many times
Yeah.
in his own submarine, and he said he knew it wasn't safe. All right, anyway, all right, here we go. So some interesting things here. Inflation is ticking up. Kevin Warsh had his first press conference yesterday. Sounded interesting. We'll see what actually gets done. And I don't know if it's so easy to change 100 years of the way doing things, even though things have been modified. But inflation is ticking up, and the market yanked back on a string and then yo-yoed back up today based on not more rate cuts, but 1 to 2 rate hikes before end of the year. And I find that to be incredibly interesting. I don't know. How do you feel?
I think the best part that came out of yesterday, which I think is what caused the market to flip out, is Warsh. I guess the best way to explain it was deal with your own stuff. We're not going to sit here and be the ones that the world revolves around the Fed. And you need to take your own look at what the economy is doing. And I like that. I like that approach of, you know what, we're not going to do all this forward thinking. This is what we think interest rates are going to do and all that. We're going to take it as it comes, which the market, I think, has been, I guess it's been just like, oh, okay, whatever the Fed does, then that's what we decide. And I think it flipped everybody out a little bit that we're going to actually have to do things on our own for a change and think for ourselves, which is
But if you
intriguing.
take a look at inflation, right, forget
Yeah.
about post-COVID. This is almost average twice as high as the prior 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, not good.
But a lot of that, and I would say probably 30 to 40% of that is because of the war and the price of oil, which has come down 30% in a matter of a couple weeks. So it's not going to be right away. I think inflation is going to stay high for the rest of the year. But I think what I read from the very short statement as well as very, very short press conference was we're not necessarily raising interest rates this year. We're going to take a look and see approach. And there, for the first time, I finally hear a Fed chairman say the obvious thing. Yeah, and gas prices are up, oil prices are up. That's causing a lot of this. We need to see how this comes down as a result of it. So I that is the one thing I like. Yes, I don't like to see inflation up, but I think it will correct itself with just what we've seen. We're at 74 this morning on West Texas Intermediate, 78 on Brent. At this point, we were at close to 100 just a little over a week and a half ago.
Yeah, 73.25. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not the 60s, but it's getting there. And
Yeah.
hope
Well, it'll get down to
tomorrow they,
55, 60 when there's
yeah,
some finality. I think in the meantime, it's going to be grossly
yeah.
volatile. All right.
And we'll see if the Iranians open up the straits tomorrow,
I
and
think the
then
straits will be open. I think it's more about the fees and the enriched uranium, but that's a
yeah,
conversation for another time. All right.
yep,
So here we go. Consumer sentiment, 70-year low. The University of Michigan has been highly criticized over the last many years because a lot of people didn't know this. I heard about this 2010 that they actually released their numbers to paid subscribers essentially 10 to 15 minutes before it's released. A lot of people are not aware of
interesting.
this. When it was all of a sudden the news networks, free and fair markets, this has
Hmm.
been around for 20, 25 years. How they're just
Yeah,
finding out about it now, I have no idea. But I actually knew about it. Somebody told me about this in 2010. But anyway, here we are at basically almost a 70-year low in
yeah.
consumer sentiment, which is just amazing. Is that because of high consumer prices across the board from the prior slide? Because if they're invested in the market, you would have found some of this to level out. What do you thought?
Yeah, I think, and we'll see a little bit of it when we look at retail sales. It's just, like I said, it's intriguing to me that the consumer says one thing and they do something completely different, like I've said.
Look,
And
let's go back to the stat.
yeah,
70% of America doesn't have $400 in the bank
yep.
account for an emergency purchase. So how
But they
many of
got
them
credit
own
cards.
stock?
But they got credit cards. And
They got credit
they've
cards.
got a firm and all the other ones that if they don't have credit cards, they've got a firm where they can buy stuff on payments or on layaway basically at that point. So yeah, it's just they say one thing, they do something different. And I think we I don't know how to read the consumer sentiment anymore. It's almost becoming a contrarian indicator for me at this point.
Usually it is on the extreme, top and
Yeah.
bottom. But
Yep.
this is a good segue to the next slide. While consumer sentiment is low, freaking earnings are going through the roof.
Yep.
And a lot of this
And
is AI driven in tech. Again, isn't this not what we heard from 96 to 99 where it was all driven? But the interesting thing was back then, that would have been the revenue chart, not the earnings chart.
that's precisely correct.
This is the
That's the
mother's milk of
difference.
earnings.
Yeah, that's the difference when people go, but it's just 1999 and 2000. Yeah, but those were companies that they were basing everything on their revenue and not looking at what
Future
the actual
revenue
earnings.
mostly.
These are real earnings. Now, some of this, I still think there's a little bit of juking and jiving going on with some of these earnings and the AI side, where they're doing a lot of these cross things and this, I'll invest in you because you buy stuff from me. And those are,
A lot
I
of that
don't
money
like.
hasn't been spent yet.
Yeah. But the reality is, and I see this from our portfolio that I run for clients, we're up a lot this year. And it's because we focused on the data centers, and the data centers if you focus on not the people that own the data centers, but you focus on the picks and shovels, those companies are doing phenomenally well because this is the largest amount of investment in any infrastructure that we've seen since the railroads. So
Yeah.
it is an amazing
I would say
time.
since the dawn of the internet, but then yes, then you could go back to the railroads.
Yeah, I would say the other one that was somewhat similar to this in current times was the real build out of telecom and the cell phone networks and all that early 2000s. And we all know how that ended. Most of the people that owned those networks went out of business or were merged into others because they'd spent all the money and somebody else could buy it super cheap and then run it. That's why Verizon's done extremely well. It's why T-Mobile's done extremely well. They ended up buying out the people who built up these huge networks. So I think that's the future, but at least for the near future, I think anything that is a pick and shovel in this area is going to be an interesting place to have some money invested. All right, let me pull up my stuff here. We're going to whip through this relatively fast. Once again, I always try and look at some of the weird and unusual things on the economic calendar. And of course, we had earlier this week, we had the Empire State Manufacturing Index. That's actually the consensus. The prior was 19.6. Consensus was 12.9 or 12.5, and it was down to 5.7. So
Jeez.
I think part of this is okay, we're trying to absorb some of this into the economy, and I think some of these areas are pulling back a bit. Now you look at Philly. Philly Fed was right on where consensus was. It was actually better than the prior. We'll have to look at where Richmond and Dallas and some of these other ones come in. But I think it's intriguing to me to see New York or Empire State starting to show a little bit of cracks in there. So it's something we need to keep an eye on. Industrial production was actually down as well. So once again, I don't know business equipment spending as part of AI. I don't know exactly where all this falls. It's something we need to keep an eye on, but it's once again, we're seeing some cracks in something that had been just rocking along pretty well in a lot of these cases. Housing starts,
Manufacturing and housing has just been
yeah,
struggling, period.
yeah, and it's struggling even more at this point.
Look, look, we've been saying it for a while until the
Yeah.
30-year not only gets under 6, but really sub 5.5.
And stay
This
there.
is going to be a stagnant industry.
Yeah. And stays there. When I talk to my realtor friends, and people are just petrified to make a decision at this point. They're it's I have to move, but I'm not going to make the move right now because I want to move, but I'm not going to make the move because I'm worried about interest rates, or I'm worried about the economy, or I'm worried about my job and everything else. So I think that's part of that consumer sentiment is trickling out into some of these other areas where the big purchases are happening.
But here's the converse to that. You would think, okay, people aren't selling their house, they're going to put money into their own house.
Yeah,
Home Depot and
no.
Lowe's are basically in a negative trend.
But that you got to remember back to you go back in time to early pandemic, people put a lot of money into their houses, and you had to know that was going to be okay. My house is fixed up. I don't really need to do anything. So you had that huge bust. If you look at during the pandemic, that huge bunch up of Home Depot, Lowe's, any of those home type companies, yeah, they were phenomenally doing well. Now they're not because you had that cycle of people doing that. And if people aren't moving, then there's no reason to fix up the new house that you're moving
Yeah,
into.
but you
So
know what, Jeff? You own a house, I own a house. The
yep,
house is a money pit. It never
yep,
ends. You keep doing stuff.
I know. I know, but people will put it off. I think right now they're not doing the major big purchases and they're not moving. So it's interesting. Yes, I agree. Mine is a money pit as well. So
I hear you. What do you
every
got?
house I've ever owned has been a money pit. All right, pending home sales, interestingly enough, they actually popped up month over month, 3.8%. I'm not sure if I totally believe this, and it was way above consensus, and I'm not so sure I totally believe this, but maybe it's a sign that we're starting to come out of the doldrums a little bit here. Last but not least, leading back to our conversation about consumer sentiment, retail sales month over month was supposed to be 0.5, it was at 0.9. So, way on the top end of the consensus range, a big surprise today. And once again, what they say and what they do. Now, part of retail sales here could very well be that goods prices are up, and it's not necessarily people are buying more, it's just they're having to pay more for what it is. And I think that's part of this big pop up here, especially with the inflation numbers we've seen over the last couple of weeks. And
Yeah,
last but not,
go
go
back,
ahead.
go back.
Yeah.
So the problem with the retail sales, right? Typically the summer is a little bit slower, right? Because people are vacationing, they're not
Mm,
going out. But retail sales, if you just take a look at consumer staples, the sector, flat to negative over the last year.
yeah.
So people are spending, but they're spending on vacations, and hotels are
Mm,
doing unbelievable. They're not
yeah.
spending on goods unless the only thing I could think of, this is sales, not profits. So are there margins being, I don't know what the deal
Yeah.
is here.
You can see in the little consensus outlook here, spending looks robust with support from rising goods prices. Okay, so people are having to pay more. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily buying more. They're paying more for those goods. So, okay, yes, retail sales is up, but that's because they have to pay more. And so they're measuring retail sales as a dollar amount, not necessarily as a percentage of increase in actual good purchases. So, you read it however you want, but it's not declining, but it's at least, let's say, holding its own. It's not declining. Last little piece of the pie, one of the ones that I follow on a regular
Yep.
basis is leading economic indicators. Yes, it's been on a big decline here. We're still on a trend upward. If you look at the trend part, we're still way above where we were back before the first or the previous big recession that we had. Still hanging in there. It's just being where it's at. Interestingly enough, you look at the numbers for the month of May, and really, the only thing that drove anything on leading economic indicators was the stock market's just been off to a major run here. If you look into the non-financial components, basically everything is flat to nothing at this point. Nothing's moving any direction, which is, of course, not having any major effect on any of the last 6 months numbers here. Average consumer expectations for business conditions still negative. And I think this goes in with what Ron talked about when it came to the consumer sentiment on that side. It's just people are very negative about what's going on, and they're going to continue to be negative at this point. And the stock market just keeps on chugging. Largely, my hero in the investment business was always Peter Lynch, and Peter said it the best: earnings always or prices always follow earnings. So if earnings are going to continue to be up, prices are going to be up in the stock market at that point. It's
Yeah, go back to the first chart. So when we brought
the
this up in the past, whether I did it or you did it, no, I'm sorry, the first LEI chart on the
oh,
top.
okay, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So the interesting part here is the royal blue line
Yep. Yep.
is
That's
the
the
LEI.
LEI.
What I'm trying to say is that it's still negative, and it's
Hmm.
been negative since early mid 2021, when
Yep.
essentially the market peaked. So we're
Hmm.
still now they always said when typically it crosses down over the black line, we should have a recession within what, 12 to 18 months. We
Yep.
didn't have necessarily a recession. So I always hated the expression they've been talking about, the quote unquote K economy. What does
Hmm.
that look like to you? That looks
Yeah.
like a K.
Yep.
And the K line is lowering consumer indicator. I don't care where the stock market is. We are just seeing basically sentiment and negative consumer indicators. Eventually,
Hmm.
look, I've been saying it with you. We've been doing this over 3 years. We never had a 3-year anniversary party, my man. But we've been doing it 3 years, and we've been saying this is just another cinder block on cracked ice. So
Yeah.
think about it. Take out AI for the last 3 years. Where
Hmm.
would we have been
Yeah.
with the market? Pull that out. Pull that
Hmm.
out. Where would we be? Forget about a recession. It's just a matter of a pullback in the market. We would be 10 10, 15, maybe 20% less than where we are right now. It's not good.
And I didn't pull up the unemployment numbers today because they were right about where expectations were. I think they said 225 and it was 226. But one of the things I heard on the news on the way in as that number was hitting the tape was that 79,000 of those jobs were direct effect by kind of positions being eliminated because of AI. Where does that continue? I think AI is going to be something that is going to revolutionize the industry or revolutionize the country and the world, but there's going to be some pain that happens as a result of it. Think back to, yeah, it's a bad explanation, but think back to people that worked for buggy whip manufacturers back in the early 1900s when cars were coming in. Yeah, you still kept doing it, but at some point there was really no need for the massive amount of buggy whips or people that made wagons and the things that whatever the little things pulled around by horses. Things change, people lose jobs, people have to change what they're doing. And once again, I've said it and I've beat a dead horse, but if you are in a job today and you are not on your own, not because your employer says to do it, but on your own, exploring things around AI, you may end up becoming somebody who's just not gonna have a job, unfortunately.
Very quickly, and we'll wrap up with this. I am not as smart as Jensen Huang, but I did read an article and I saved it that he agreed with me. I don't think he heard the podcast that AI will eventually create net jobs, not necessarily be a negative.
Totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree. But
listening.
Yeah, it's going to take it's going to take companies to say, all right, we're going to retrain our workforce in this as we integrate it in. It is going to eliminate repetitive jobs. I think at some point in the very, very near future, especially if, Elon Musk has anything to do with it, robots are going to eliminate a lot of repetitive jobs. I've seen if you've not seen it, just go Elon Musk robots on YouTube or something like that and see how good those things really are.
Listen, I will buy a robot tomorrow if it'll clean my house. Mop the floors, do the kitchens, do the bathrooms. I will do it tomorrow.
I already have my iRobot. So it's out there doing my floor has never been cleaner except when it gets stuck under the wine rack or it runs out of juice halfway.
Well, maybe it was thirsty.
I know, and it runs out of juice halfway across the floor and it's just sitting in the middle of the floor dead when I come home. So other than that, it works amazingly well. And I will at some point want to afford an Elon Musk robot to clean my house for me. I'm right there with you.
I hear you. Until next week, my man.
All right, brother. Thank you. And folks, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and make sure that you give us an upvote. And we'll see you guys back here the very next time.